Hello and welcome, Pio fans, to another edition of the SHU Sports Report. Today's show will feature a huge weekend for women's volleyball, as well as a few of our Sacred Heart sports kicking off their 2018-19 seasons. I'm Chris Caiozzo.
And I'm Ryan Toohey. Chris, the women's volleyball team certainly had a great showing this past weekend at the Hampton Inn by Hilton Shelton Invitational. So why don't you get us all caught up on their great weekend?
That's right, Ryan. The women's volleyball team hosted their annual Invitational at the University of Rhode Island, Binghamton University, and NJIT all came to the Pitt Center this past weekend. Women's volleyball kicked off the Hampton Inn by Hilton Shelton Invitational with a win on Friday night, sweeping NJIT 3-0. The only set that was close was the first set. SHU found themselves down by 6 late in the set. The Pios would find their groove, going on a 9-3 run, pushing the set into extra points and taking it 27-25. Redshirt junior Liesl Nellis had 10 kills, and first-year Alex Polk had 11 digs. It was all uphill from there for the Pioneers on the second day, defeating Binghamton 3-1. After dropping the first set, the Pioneers won 3 consecutive sets to take the game. Nellis and Polk led SHU with 14 kills apiece. First-year Emma Smallcombe had 27 digs, and first-year Sarah Sizik had a triple-double with 11 kills, 45 assists, and 13 digs. The final game was the game that the Pioneers were waiting for all weekend as they faced the Rams from URI. Both teams were 2-0, and they didn't disappoint the crowd as it was a 5-set match. Even the fifth set went into extra points as it was tied at 14, but kills by Polk and Nellis gave the Pioneers an undefeated weekend. Sizik, Polk, and Nellis were all named to the all-tournament team, with Sizik being the tournament MVP. Smallcombe was named the NEC Co-Defensive Player of the Week, and Sizik was named NEC Rookie of the Week. SHU has a 7-4 record going to NEC this weekend as they face St. Francis Brooklyn tomorrow at the Pitt Center. That starts at 6 p.m.
What a way to end their non-conference slate. Now they look to use the momentum to make the top 4 in the NEC to make it to the championship tournament.
We'll go from the volleyball courts to the field hockey turf. Why don't you tell us about the field hockey weekend, Ryan?
Well, Chris, field hockey had 3 games over the past week, beginning with a Friday contest at Dartmouth's Thompson Arena. The Pioneers would strike first after junior forward Colleen McKinley intercepted a pass from Dartmouth and scored a goal at the 17:09 mark, giving the Pios a 1-0 lead. Dartmouth would immediately respond, though, as the Big Green found the back of the net, tying things up at 1. The game would remain tied for the rest of the first half, but SHU retook the early lead in the second on a goal by junior midfielder Marlena Kollner. Dartmouth again had an answer for the Pios as they tied the score at 2. The game would then stay tied for a little over 10 minutes until it was Colleen McKinley again scoring for the Pioneers, following an assist from sophomore forward Kayla Bettle-Franklin. That gave the Pios a 3-2 lead, and they'd eventually go on to win the game by that score. After a loss to UMass Lowell, Sacred Heart looked to bounce back as they hosted Hofstra on Tuesday. The game started at noon, but a rainy, lightning-filled day didn't let the game conclude until 4:30. Starting off hot, the Pios put an early goal on the board when Marlena Kollner snuck in a pass to fellow junior McKenna Crawford, who scored the first goal of the day. Hofstra would answer late in the second half after a series of lightning delays pushed the game into overtime. After 2 scoreless overtime periods, the Pioneers and the Pride duked it out in penalty strokes. The shootout went all the way to the 13th shot until Hofstra finally netted their first penalty stroke. SHU had one chance to tie it, but unfortunately fell short and lost to the Pride 2-1. The field hockey team's next game will be at Yale, but they will be the visitors as the Bulldogs will host the Pios for a 1 o'clock game. By the way, a quick shout out to Bridget Larikia's parents for providing me with some water during the game against UMass. It was scorching hot. I needed that, so thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Larikia.
After the break, we have our very own Anthony Scone standing by with this week's Update Corner. Welcome back to the SHU Sports Report. We'll kick off this week's Update Corner with some Sacred Heart tennis as both teams started their 2018 and 19 season. First up, the women's tennis team started their season this past Sunday at the Quinnipiac Invitational. SHU played some of its strongest tennis in the decon singles bracket as sophomore Lauren Santosiero played some great tennis and took home the title for the decon singles bracket. In her first match, she beat her opponent 8-0.
And fellow teammate junior Nicole Vasily was also in this bracket, and she ran her side as she won her first match 8-2. This would set up a full Sacred Heart finale as the two girls battled it out for the top spot. And in a hard-fought finals match, Santa Sierra took the title home, defeating Vasily 8-2. Some other Pioneers that had a great day was junior Brianne Loria, who defeated Fairfield and UConn in the ACON singles, making her way to the final round before being defeated by NEC foe Bryant. Sophomore Laura Creevy had a great day in the BCon singles, climbing her way to the finals round before falling to NEC foe Bryant. And last but not least, junior Maggie Glynn defeated Bryant and fellow teammate first-year Macy Wardius before falling in the final round against Army. Sacred Heart women's tennis is back in action September 21st for the Hofstra Invitational. Now we're going to keep things right here with tennis as we'll move over to the men's as they participated in the UConn Invitational this past weekend. The doubles team of freshman William Wilmer and sophomore Luca Castleduke led the way for the Pioneers. They started out hot as they came right out and defeated Fairfield 6-3 in the first set. Then in the second set, they found themselves in a tough game where they were just able to edge out the victory over Bentley 7-6. Then the double team took on Quinnipiac in the semifinals and defeated the Bobcats by another 7-6 score. Unfortunately, they would lose by a single point in the finals match to Boston U. But still, what a magical run for the SHU duo. In singles, first-year Kevin Chow found himself in the consolation bracket, but worked his way to the finals, defeating Holy Cross and UConn before falling 8-6 in the following round. Up next, men's tennis will join the women's team at the Hofstra Invitational starting on September 21st. Now for some men's golf, they competed at the Hartford Hawks Invitational this past weekend. And boy, it was a solid outing for the Pioneers as they finished +9 for the tournament. Their 585 total placed them in 7th out of 20 teams. Sophomore Clifford Lindholm was the leader for the Pioneers as he tied for 12th out of 112 total competitors, finishing just 3 under par. Teammate Nathan Kim wasn't far behind as he finished the two-day event 1 over par, which was good enough for 28th place. Sacred Heart men's golf travels to Yale for their next matchup as they compete in the McDonald Cup on the 29th and the 30th. Stay tuned, Pile fans, because after the commercial break, we will have more on men's soccer and how their week went.
We'll round out the show with some Sacred Heart men's soccer.
Sacred Heart men's soccer traveled to Loudonville, New York to face off against an equally matched Siena College team. SHU traveled to hit the road on Saturday in what was an action-packed affair. Both teams battled back and forth throughout the course of the day, and it was still scoreless going into the second half. That was until Siena scored in the 66th minute to get on the board first and take a 1-0 lead. SHU bounced back, though, and responded thanks in part to a goal from sophomore midfielder Alejandro Arribas, which tied things up at 1. The game would remain tied for the rest of regulation, and it subsequently went into overtime. Despite 2 shots from senior defenseman Elias Olar and midfielder Oscar Corris, it wasn't SHU's day as the Saints would score the game-winning goal at the 98th minute mark.
That'll do it for this week's SHU Sports Report, but be sure to tune in next Thursday as we get you caught up on all your Sacred Heart sports action, highlights, and more. From all of us here at the SHU Sports Report, I'm Chris Caiozzo.
And I'm Ryan Toohey. Thanks for watching.